On this midweek roundup, LaLiga comes back with a bang. It's all about the cup, and we preview the main storylines in the world of football. Full-time roundup starts right now. And welcome into the latest edition of the Full-Time Roundup, first episode of 2024. Matt Gesslin here, as always, joined by Daniel Brackett. Daniel, welcome to 2024. I hope you had a great evening capping it off. I know that you mentioned on the last episode that we're trying to go 27 and a half days sober. I'm curious if we're still following through with that. But either way, welcome to 2024. Welcome back to the games. Of course, the game never sleeps, and we have a lot to talk about here as well today, per usual.
That is true, and it's actually dry January. Big difference there, but it is going well so far. We'll see after 2 weeks in with some weekends and friends texting about plans.
We're getting there. We're getting
how well that goes. I'm locked down this weekend, so I'm not gonna have to think about it. But next weekend is when the challenge starts. My buddy decided to do it with me. We made a $25 wager on. If you break it, then you owe the other person money. So now I have some financial interest as well. So I'm not going to lose that one. But we'll see. I guess anything can happen here. But glad to be talking some soccer with you. It's not a shortened week, but a lighter schedule. So we can get to more storylines today than just a roundup. And do you just want to hop right in?
Absolutely. And just a heads up too, as I mentioned, 2024 new year. There will be some new elements and new segments that we have throughout the show here sprinkled in. Again, as Daniel said, it's a lighter week, so I'm probably going to continue just the traditional flow of things here, but just a look out as we start progressing and had a great year in 2023 with all you guys. Thank you for listening to us. But of course, a show and everything as in normal life evolves, and so will this show going forward. But as Daniel mentioned, jumping right in, of course, there was 2 Premier League games to start the season, the new year, excuse me. Of course, the big one, Daniel's Liverpool, started us off right away, New Year's Day. What were your takeaways from this? A big 4-2 win against Newcastle, who have been struggling. But Daniel, how do you feel coming out of the gates, right out of the break with a win to start things off?
It was a demolition in live time. I don't think the scoreline reflected that, but we just were all over Newcastle other than a couple minutes of the game. And the scoreline didn't really properly reflect what the performance was like. Concede off a bad giveaway and then a corner, but we created more chances than I've seen in a very long time. With an XG of 7, which is the highest ever, I think, in the Premier League. I don't care. But you have 4 goals scored with a missed penalty and Darwin Nunez missing 5 sitters. So, you'd like to have Nunez hit those right before Mo goes to AFCON, but and Indo with a great performance. But at the end of the day, I'll take a win here, and it's a good propellant into Sunday as we play one of the better teams that we'll face this year with Arsenal. So not really that worried, but do you want to get into Liverpool and how they're going to fare, or do you want to wait and say that till later?
No, I think it's important now, especially, the win gives them a 5-point cushion atop the table as well. I think you mentioned, not a 5-point of everybody, but 5 points clear of Arsenal and City, who I think we both agree are the 2 rivals that are going to give them the toughest match. So a big one right out of the gate to get that win. You mentioned, Nunez missing some chances, which I think is, of course, the place we have to start, right? Especially with everything that's going to be going on here. And we'll allude to and get to some of the big impacts of players going to AFCON and the Asian Cup shortly. But I mean, where do you stand on this? Are you concerned now? Because this continues to be a problem for Darwin Nunez. He he shows off and scores these golazos, but then can't find the back of the net for very simple tap-ins as a striker. So how do you feel going here? Of course, Endo is going to be gone as well. Who's he's come in and been very serviceable. He's gotten up to speed. I think he's not really going to be the guy in that midfield when McAllister's back, but he's done a good job and kind of starting to fit what Klopp is wanting from that player in that position. So, what are your takeaways, I guess, as the Liverpool fan? Are you concerned with Mo Salah going away? And really, what do you think is a fair result going forward? Also, just want to point out that Arsenal match that you mentioned is a cup game, so not a Premier League match. So a big difference there, but you still want to win those games as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be completely insane if I said that we'll have no repercussions to Mo Salah leaving. The good news is that Jota's back to fitness. Luis Diaz looked like, honestly, our second best player last week. I think he's the best player in tight spaces, and we're going to need him to keep working this magic with the defense not thinking about Mo on the other side. But there is a Nunez conundrum because he gets the most chances out of anyone in the Premier League. It seems he's missed the most chances out of anyone as well, other than I think Nico Jackson's right behind, so something we can relate about here. But the fact that he keeps getting in these positions, he still has double figures in goal contributions. I mean, his assist to Mo was a solid one, and he doesn't seem like he ever loses confidence. So I think he's going to come good, and this is the time for him to prove himself, and I think he knows that. So I'm not worried. I think it's one of those things where when it rains, it pours. So if we could get him like one goal early, like say he scores against Arsenal, I think that will propel him on for the next coming months. It's just about getting that first goal. And it's not like he was missing, he wasn't skying chances. Like Dubravka also made some insane saves, like the one off his kneecap, point blank. Like there's nothing really he can do about that. And Dubravka just pulled the goal out of his ass. So he's not missing by terrific margins. I still believe him as a player, and I think he'll definitely make up, that price tag that he cost us, and he'll spur on our title push.
Definitely high praise. I don't feel as confident. We've talked about this in text back and forth as well the last couple of weeks, and so I'm just curious to see how he fares. He is now the main guy. There's no doubt about that. There's no sugarcoating it or looking around. He will be the focus attacking wise for Liverpool. Of course, he'll have a lot of help with him in Diego Jota and Cody Gakpo there as well. So definitely have some pieces that'll help out, but the premise and onus is going to be on him to put the ball in the back of the net. And will he be able to deliver? Only time will tell. We'll find out here soon enough. And you just hope for his sake. No one wants to see a player, have a bad spell. And so you hope he does well. But on the flip side of that, Daniel, because we covered a lot of Liverpool in this game, which I think was, again, rightfully so with them being atop the table. Newcastle, who really, I think we can almost say right now that they're in free fall. They've lost 4 of their last 5. They have Manchester City coming out of the break as the next Premier League game. Of course, there's cup games in between that for FA Cup that will pause the Premier League for this week. But where do we stand on Eddie Howe and Newcastle? We've talked about, we felt like Eddie Howe was safe. I still kind of feel that way, but things are getting really, really dire up at Tysdale.
I think I said that if it turns into 7 defeats or close to it within like 8 matches, I would see maybe they part ways with him. And I actually saw that the Girona coach was linked today with that job if they decided to move on from Eddie Howe. I don't think that would be fair to Eddie Howe, but a manager has to perform with what the pieces he's given. I'm sure they'll dip into the market a little bit in January, and that might give them some reprieve. But we haven't seen anything early, so we'll kind of see and monitor that situation. But I don't know. I think they'll be able to be okay at some point. But if they got battered by City, I don't know. You could see his way out. So that's a tough question. But I'm excited to see what the answer is with those new owners, and that'll be their first firing. So it's hard with no track record.
It would be interesting for them to go after the Girona coach. Of course, Girona, maybe the story of the year right now. There's also potentially another manager that we can get into, as we'll talk about it here a little bit in the next league that we'll focus on. Some news coming out of Madrid that may change things for a particular manager in Germany. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Could they make a move for him? We'll get to that in a second. But of course, Daniel, while there was plenty of goals in this Liverpool Newcastle game on Monday, complete opposite on Tuesday. West Ham and Brighton played to a scoreless draw. David Moyes special at home, at the London Stadium. We talk about nap games quite often on this show, primarily for La Liga or Serie A, excuse me. This was maybe the ultimate nap game, in my perspective. West Ham just packed it in. And basically from, I would say, the 30-minute mark inward, they had no desire to go forward and make this an open game, which was very surprising for me.
I don't think it was that surprising. A couple hours before the match, it came out that Paqueta and Kudus would not be playing, and their center back Aguerd, who will be out on international duty as well. So when I saw Kudus and Paqueta out, that immediately made me think, okay, well, there's going to be no goals coming from that West Ham side. So it was really up to Brighton, and Brighton's not exactly healthy themselves. It was kind of a hospital versus hospital match at this point. So kind of foresaw that to be a really boring match. That's why I did not really tune into it. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like that was a pretty fair result, and both needed at least a point in this fight for top five, and they both got it. So at the end of the day, I think no harm, no foul.
Yeah, of course, 6th and 7th place respectively. So that was a pretty big matchup there for one of those two teams, and they get the draw. I think if you're West Ham, again, continuing to keep your place ahead of Brighton in this instance, I think maybe you're a little bit more pleased with the point. As a neutral, that was just one of the most difficult games to watch, to be completely honest. It just felt like, again, like you said, West Ham was never expecting to get a point or to go for it and kind of steal the 3 points. We've seen them time and time again, at least offer something on the counter or have some moment in a game, and that really wasn't the case here. And again, I mentioned that this is the David Moyes special. He's notoriously good at just packing it in, playing almost 2 lines of 5 in some fashion, and you saw that here in this game, where when the ball was in the Brighton half of the field, it was really 3 up top, kind of pressing lightly, and 7 behind the ball, and then it never really kind of expanded any more than that. So it just felt like David Moyes set this one up from the start. And you just wonder, long term, if he's going to be a good fit for the Premier League and kind of for West Ham. Can they continue to play this way and really kind of make any headway going forward? We've heard, he hasn't been re-signed yet after arguably one of their best seasons in a long time, winning a trophy and being in the top 6 right now. So you're just kind of wondering why we haven't heard anything about a new contract. Is that something that the team is just not thrilled with the way he's playing, even though they're getting results? So just something to keep an eye out. And again, this is how David Moyes has been for a very, very long time. Nothing new here. And it's just curious to me, where he ends up long term.
Yep. To go from the cold atmosphere to England to the sunny beaches in Spain. Not so sunny right now, but as a little contrast, we did have some Liga matches this week, and to start out, we'll start out with the title race here. So Madrid scraped by. They score I think it was an 80th minute on winner by Rudiger. They needed that. They were pushing hard. Brahim Diaz missed an absolute sitter right before this goal happened, and you could see how much it meant to the Madristas getting that goal at home. And you texted me, and they get healthier. Vinicius Jr. goes and gets more than a half of game time. Rodrigo is surprisingly back. And then they rely on the old boys with Cruz and Modric in the midfield, and Chinemi as a center back, which he's proven that he can be very versatile. So, it's still a very thin squad, but Carlo Ancelotti, the Don, gets it done again.
The Don does get it done again. He, of course, signs a new contract as well. We alluded to that a little bit earlier, signed until 2026. So unfortunately for Brazil, that it looks like that officially is over as a potential option. You mentioned them getting healthier as well. I think it's still going to be a tough one for Ancelotti and this squad. They're not going to have their full roster. They mentioned earlier in the window, or not in the window, but leading into the window, that they are not going to make any signings in January. I find that a little bit hard to believe, especially with Copa del Rey and Champions League still on the docket. And once those two leagues come back and start adding to their, their already full plate of La Liga, it's going to be interesting to see just how long this squad can keep it up. We've seen it with Newcastle, and just what the injuries can do to you there. Of course, I'm not comparing Real Madrid and Newcastle by any stretch of the imagination. One has done this countless times. The other is just finding its way. But injuries and play and how many minutes these guys can play. We've seen it all across Europe, all across the world, really, of late, where little injuries, mainly muscular, that you kind of pin to just tiredness, or a lack of ability to rest and kind of get some new life and blood into those muscles, and you get another injury here or there. So it will be interesting to see what happens to Madrid going forward. Of course, they keep pace, which is hard to imagine that's what we're saying, with Girona. Daniel, both sit atop the table at 48 points, 10 points clear of Atleti and Athletic Club. Of course, Barcelona get a huge win. We'll talk about that in a second here today. That just wrapped up as we are recording this. But the big story for me is Girona. I think the big story for you has been Girona as well. They continue to get results, beating Atleti at home in a thrilling game, 4-3. Daniel, is this team for real? I mean, we're at the halfway point now, for La Liga, 19 games played. Can they do this?
I mean, I think so. Months back, when we just started the show, Girona were hot. They played Madrid, and Madrid absolutely battered them. And we're like, okay, maybe this is a fluke, but they can't do it against the big teams around them. And then they go on and they beat Barcelona, and then they beat Atletico Madrid. And these are two of the best teams in Spain. So, yes, they can do this. They very obviously can. And they did it with not a B lineup, but, they started Pablo Torre, who hasn't gotten many minutes. They didn't start Yangel Herrera. Their tricky Ukrainian winger, I can't pronounce his name, so I won't even try, did not play. So, yes, they can. And it's kind of like shabby ball a little bit, where you just plug and play and the team doesn't really change. And that's what we're seeing. And, Michel is going to be the hottest name on the market right now as a coach, other than Xabi Alonso probably. So be on the lookout for him to market himself as for the next job. I think he will stay with Girona for the rest of the season. I think that would be really stupid if he left. But Guardiola's brother came out and said, look, we're really happy with Michel. And if Michel wants to take that next step in the summer, we are not going to stand in his way. He deserves it. And I mean, this is a coach that brought them up from the second division. He's been, he's won with the Girona fans. He, goes to his next door neighbor and hangs out with them to speak and learn Catalan. Like these are kind of the intangibles that you can't see, but these are kind of the little things that make a manager great and get the team to buy in, and as well as the club.
Yeah, the only thing I have, and it's a great story. I think it's a 2-horse race at the top. I think Barcelona getting the win today helps them keep in touch, but 7 points behind is a lot, especially the way they've been playing. We'll touch on them here in a second. But I think, the one thing that concerns me from Girona's perspective is just the way that they play defensively. We've talked about it before, where they give up goals. They have to score 5 to win a game, or four goals to win a game. Of course, this one came in the 90th minute, out of nothing kind of little cheeky chip that probably was not intended to go in the net. You're looking at a team like Atleti, who are not exactly the most firepower offensively historically, and they dismantled that defense. I think, after the half, they could have scored 3 goals just in the first 10 minutes of the second half, honestly. So that's my only concern. And then you add that on top of the pressure that will eventually come for this squad being, such an underdog and such a team that is not used to this situation. Although you have players like, Eric Garcia, who's been around the block, and Daily Blend, and, players that have experienced it and been at the highest level. But again, you're looking at a different type of pressure at that point. So it will be interesting for me. I think Atleti are officially out of this race, if you're asking me as well. 10
Agreed.
points clear now, and they just continue to drop points against teams that you would, Girona, of course, being a top table team, but you would still expect Diego Simeone and his men to get a result here and give up 4 goals for a team that is so predominantly focused on defense is really disappointing for them. So an interesting time. Of course, he just signed a new contract as well, after a lot of rumors that he was on the way out. So it'll be interesting. And then, of course, the last team that we want to talk about here in the big four, if you will, is Barcelona. And Daniel, we've talked about this. You've donned them as the super squad of the year. Long time ago. What is happening to Xavi Hernandez and Barcelona? They needed a late penalty from Ilkay Gundogan to get the 3 points here against Las Palmas, who are not that good. You lose João Cancelo in the first half with an injury. We'll have to find out how severe that is. This is starting to look like almost the end for Xavi Hernandez, is it not?
Well, not with a win like that, but it's definitely concerning. Unlike Girona, Bayer Leverkusen, it is not a plug-and-play system. He's been depending on the brilliance of Pedri, Gavi, all these players, Lewandowski, who's been awful, a shell of himself since the start of this campaign after they won LaLiga last year. So, and now you have Cancelo with getting subbed with an injury, so that's going to really hurt their attack. Maybe this late stoppage time winner will buoy them to kind of bounce back here. But again, a common theme here, they keep conceding early, and you cannot win titles when you concede early. So I find it hard to believe that Barca will not be patient with Xavi, but obviously if things keep going this way, it's hard to imagine them to not, move on from him, or I don't know.
I guess how far do they have to go in the Champions League realistically, and maybe Copa del Rey, both of those tournaments. The race is not officially over for them. There are a lot of games still to be played. They have El Clasico still to play they'll play Girona one more time. So that's 6 points if they can win both those games and get that, but with other results, get that down to maybe a point. But let's be honest, it's probably not going to happen in La Liga for them this year. So you're looking at Copa del Rey and Champions League. I said, how far do they have to go for this season to not really be a failure after a pretty big, big comeback year for them last year?
Well, I'll tell you what the biggest coach killer is for a Barcelona or Madrid is losing El Clasico, and that is on April 21st. So it's pretty late in the season. So if he manages to survive till then, still not doing too hot, and then they get battered by Madrid, that is when you would see, him see his way out. But you asked me about knockouts. I would say at least past the round. I can't remember exactly who they're drawn to at this moment in time. I'm going to search it up real quick. But I would say at least get past the first stage. If not, they play Napoli. So they should get by Napoli. And if they don't get by Napoli, then see you later, Xavi. But I would imagine that, semis, maybe quarters would be acceptable. I don't think anyone expects him to win it. So I wouldn't be that shocked if they're, were patient with him if they got past Napoli.
Yeah, you'd have to think that the club has at least earmarked quarterfinal from a financial standpoint, especially given everything that they have going on as a club there. So you'd imagine that he's going to be, focused on that at least. So like you said, got to beat Napoli. You got to at least get to a semifinal of Copa del Rey, in my opinion. If you lose, like you said, both El Clasicos this year, that's really going to be a problem. So we'll keep an eye out for Xavi, and who knows, maybe they can turn things around. They do have injuries as well. You mentioned, of course, Gabi's out for the rest of the year. Pedri seemed like he was coming back and then does not play today. So interesting to see what happens there. But it's tough times in Barcelona after, winning the league last year. And you're looking at a surprise team like Girona that's in Catalonia, the noisy neighbor, essentially. And how will that impact things at the Camp Nou? So we'll see how that goes. Moving down, though, of course, the impact of not only the Barcelona result, but the game against Girona is that Atleti now are sitting in 5th place, Daniel, which I didn't think was possible. Athletic Club Bilbao have moved up. They win today against Sevilla, who have been absolutely abysmal this year and for the last couple years. It's unfortunate to see. Of course, we've talked about them and how strong they are in Europa League, but in the domestic league, they just cannot find their footing. They lose again. And like I said, Bilbao jumps Atleti, a big surprising result here. And one that, you were pretty high on Athletic Club. I think they were your 4th place team, if I remember correctly. So you're looking pretty good right now, but obviously time will tell. Will Girona keep the pace and stay up there? But either way, a big result for them.
Absolutely. So glad they're making me look smart. So as long as they
every
keep
now
up,
and then, every now and then,
sometimes you just got to see the ball go through the hoop, right? So I'll take it, but not much commentary on that match. You did a good job covering that. But I want to switch really quickly to Coppa Italia. I know that not that many of our listeners probably follow the Coppa Italia, but it's always for the cup, so we at least got to mention it. So the new matchups for the next round are Atalanta, Milan, Bologna, Fiorentina, Lazio, Roma, which is a fantastic Rome derby. Yeah, I said that right. Juve, Frosinone. I'd love to hear your prediction for the Coppa Italia.
Oh boy. I mean, as far as this round or winner of the whole thing, because for this round doesn't really
Let's
make
do this
much.
rapid fire this round.
All right, so Milan probably wins that matchup against Atalanta. Fiorentina probably beats Bologna. We've talked about Bologna. They've had a little bit of a slip in the league. Give me Jose Mourinho and Roma in a tournament, no doubt about that. I'm not even going to think about Lazio in this instance. Jose is a master when it comes to knockout competitions. Juve will probably win this one, although Allegri ball, we've talked about it, puts me to sleep, as does Jose's play, but that's neither here nor there. If you're asking me for a winner of these teams, because these are the last teams left in Coppa Italia, probably going to be Juve. I think Juve is fine. They have obviously the most talented roster of these remaining teams, and one of the better managers. So depending on the draw, of course, this could end up, Roma versus Juve again, like we saw in the league last week. But yeah, I'll take Juve as my winner for Coppa Italia. And we talked about a big statement for financially for Barca previously. That would be a big one for Juve, who've had their struggles as well, with financial fair play and punishments from the league and stuff like that. So they need this one just as much as any of the teams above them.
Couldn't agree more. I'm going to go with Atalanta over AC Milan, Bologna over Fiorentina. So
is that the end for Spaloli, or if AC Milan lose, or is that?
It's day to day with Pioli right now. So and he might be gone before these matchups even take place at this point. I'm going definitely Rome over Lazio, and Juve over Frosinone. And to mix it up a little bit, I'm gonna say don't not back Mourinho in a cup competition. I'm gonna say Roma. They need that financial money desperately. Mourinho's probably out after this year, and he wants to leave with a trophy. And I think he's gonna focus his attention on this cup as much as possible. So that's my prediction. And then right before the break, PSG win the Super Cup. Don't even really know what the Super Cup is, to be quite honest. You might have to educate me, but it's the 12th title. They've won 10 out of the last 11. Boring. But they're pretty poor in this match. I got to watch some of it. Toulouse just could not put the ball in the back of the net. I don't know. I mean, a title's or a trophy's a trophy, but Enrique ball has not, amazed me so far. So that's going to be an interesting storyline to see how far they go in the quarter or in the Champions League. because they probably got the title already wrapped up here. But I think he'll be given more than 1 year. But still, you'd like to see that project evolve a little bit more at this stage.
Yeah, of course, Kylian Mbappe gets a goal as well, and a great finish from a great player is not surprising, to be honest. For just so you're aware, Daniel, the Super Cup is the winner of the league as well as the winner of the French Cup. So it's basically kind of one of those throwaway trophies, but a win is a win. Trophy's a trophy. The big news, of course, coming out of the Super Cup is that Kylian Mbappe announced that he has not made his decision yet as far as where he is going.
Classic.
So, of course, never fails to have some drama around him. That'll be interesting. Also states that once he knows where he's going this year, Daniel, he's announcing it. He's not waiting till May like he did last year. So we'll see how that goes.
God bless.
The man just likes to have the hype around himself. Let's just leave it there. But as you mentioned,
real quick,
yeah.
So basically, the Community Shield at the start of the season for the Prem is the same thing, just at a different. Okay, got it.
Correct.
Awesome.
Yes, you are correct. But
you can learn something new every day.
Learn something new every day. But yeah, it'll be not much of a trophy. 12th title, like you mentioned, 10 of the last 11. One of those projects one of those trophies that you would expect PSG with the most talented roster to win year in, year out. But as you mentioned, we are taking a break. We'll be right back. Again, do not fail to follow us on X, engage with us over there. We're going to be doing a lot more of that this year. You can also download, subscribe the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a 5-star rating as well. And on the other side of the break, Daniel, there's a lot of news happening in the sport right now. So we'll get to some of that. We'll look at, the impacts of AFCON and Asia Cup coming up, as well as the transfer window is open. And it's a Thursday show, folks, so we have to give you some predictions for the weekend. So we'll be right back on the other side of the break to take care of all that. And welcome back. Daniel, I mentioned before the break, there is a big storyline that is now going to take shape for a lot of the players and teams across Europe. Of course, we were talking about AFCON, which is the African Federation of Nations. If I got that almost correct. Cup of Nations. There we go. Missed the C. And of course, there's the Asian Cup, which will be taking players from a lot of teams across Europe for potentially up to a month, depending on how far some of these teams go. They will have major implications across a lot of times, as well as potentially some relegation battles for some teams as well. So we'll try and go through a lot of these here for you as best we can. There's a handful. I'm looking at a list right now that has about 12 impact players. There's probably more depending on who you root for. But Daniel, let's start off here. Who is your biggest name and impact? Of course, Mo Salah, I think, is on everyone's list for Liverpool. But give me another name that may not be on everyone's mind here that's going to make a huge impact for one of these teams going forward.
I'd have to say it's a tie between Kudus for West Ham and Son for Spurs.
Wow. No Boniface for Bayer Leverkusen, who are in a title race, or
after I saw Schick step up with that hat trick, my worry of Leverkusen's title push got a little bit less. So I'm gonna stick with these choices. How about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Victor Boniface. Again, he's been so important for Bayer Leverkusen, and they need every player at the highest level they can play at to beat Bayern Munich. We've seen just what that team can do. Of course, they will have some of their own players out, Kim in the back and Mizraoui, so both defensive players that will be gone for them. But again, the way that team is played, Bayer Leverkusen, that is, with Victor Boniface up top, I think he's going to be such a miss for them. And again, depending on how far some of these teams go, you could be looking at 3, maybe 4 games gone, and how much, similar to what we've talked about with Mo Salah for Liverpool, how much damage can be done for Bayer Leverkusen during that period, and can they make that up when they do get him back? Of course, you're also looking at a player like Garassi from Stuttgart, of course, they're not necessarily in the title race, but a great season so far for them. That could impact Champions League or European football for them, which would be a huge loss given how strong they've been to start this season. So for me, that's those are the two big player or the biggest impact for me is Victor Boniface. But you're also, like I said, looking at Garassi. You could look at a player like from Real Sociedad, like Kubo, who is a huge loss for them. Again, Champions League starts February 15th or something like that. And depending on how far Japan goes, he could be out until February 13th.
They're going to go far.
I know. Yeah, they will. So, he's going to miss that first leg of the Champions League, which for Real Sociedad is a huge, huge loss. We've also, we've even mentioned Osimhen for Napoli, Minamino again for Monaco, Hakimi and Kang for PS. I mean, there are a lot of players here, Daniel, is what we're getting at, that are going to be gone, that are going to have a huge impact. Now, the only team, one of the main teams that does not have anyone going to either tournament. I don't know how, or if this was by design, or there's a genius in his head that says, you know what, every couple of years, I'm going to lose a player for 4 weeks here, is Manchester City. They do not have anyone going to either of these tournaments. They are getting completely unscathed by this. And not only that, Daniel, but they're getting healthier. Kevin De Bruyne was on the bench for the last game, didn't play. Erling Haaland should be back. So it goes both ways, right? This has a huge impact negatively, but also positively for some teams. And I'm curious if there's any team besides City, because we know regardless if they had team players lost, they would be in a good place. But who has the biggest impact, not just player wise, but team wise for you here?
I would say like a team like Villa or Brighton, who are kind of still in the mix here. If they can get healthy during this time, when I mentioned Son. They're also going to be missing Basuma and Sarr in that midfield core. That is going to be a big loss. So like we could see like a Spurs team really struggle. Sorry JH, but I just don't see Skip, making and filling those boots.
Hey, don't knock Oliver Skip. Johnny Hayes will come after you. That's his boy.
A 45-year-old. He looks like a 45-year-old anyways. But yeah, so I would say like Brighton, if they can get healthy, Aston Villa can, solidify themselves above Spurs here. I know Nico Jackson is going to be missing, but with Nkunku being back, maybe Chelsea can make up some ground with like a team like West Ham, who are going to really miss that spark that Kudus brings. He's been probably their best player other than Paqueta all season, and he's the one that's been putting the balls in the back of the net. So stuff like that. We didn't mention, let's see here. I think AC Milan is going to really struggle with Chukwueze and Benacer being injured or being out. But I also think, that plays into Inter Milan and Juventus solidify themselves as the two who, and we already kind of knew that, but that really, solidifies the two separating themselves from the others. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Milan copes, with Napoli right behind them. And, Fiorentina and Atalanta and Roma still in the mix there. Roma's missing Asmun and Indica. Not huge exclusions there, but, these like 3-4 spots in the table can really have a financial hit, not even a team hit here. So that's kind of what the storyline and how I've been looking at it, like who's really going to suffer. And, PSG is probably really glad that, they've already kind of done and dusted the league, because missing Hakimi and Kang is gonna hurt them quite a bit.
Yeah, you mentioned, I kind of alluded to a team like Bayer Leverkusen and their title hopes here, but you nailed it right on the head. There's a lot of implications here. So not only third, fourth place relegation, potentially, a player like Idrissa Gueye from, Everton, if he's gone for a while, he's a big piece in their midfield. You're looking at a relegation battle for them right now. You mentioned Bilbao, Inaki Williams, who's going to be gone. could that impact the fourth place position for them? We already touched on Real Sociedad with Kubo as well. And again, the more we talk about this, the more names that keep coming out of our mouths. Milan with Chukwueze and Benacer. There's just continually adding people to this list as we talk about it. So it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out of this unscathed. Of course, we didn't even talk about a team like Nottingham Forest, who's going to lose 6 of their starters to this tournament across the board. So there's teams that are going to be decimated. There's teams like City that are not going to be touched. And it's an interesting one that I think a lot of people are not really sure why this tournament is done, or these 2 tournaments are done midway through the season, Daniel. And I think it's an interesting discussion to have going forward. Of course, I don't know the actual reasoning as to why these tournaments are when they are, why they can't be moved to the summer like the Euros and Copa America, which we'll have as well, which have no impact on European leagues. Of course, MLS will have some impact from that, things like that. But why we can't have a universal schedule for some of these tournaments? You've heard a player like Kubo come out and say he's so upset that he has to leave Real Sociedad for this extended period of time, and he doesn't know why these tournaments can't be played in the summer. It's going to make a huge impact. It impacts the player themselves. They put in so much work and commitment to get their team in the best place they can on the table, and then they have to just depart for almost a month. And so I'm just curious, if you have any thoughts as to why, or any reason to why this might have been a tournament or set of tournaments that is played in the middle of a season.
I do have a few thoughts. One, it's maddening that it's still happening. I mean, I guess we did see a World Cup in the middle of the season. So
yeah, but everyone at least had to shut down at the same time for that, which is different.
That is true. I hate it because the AFCON and the Asian Cup, I feel like they really are a minority of players in the world of football, especially in the top leagues, European leagues especially. So it's a real shame that could this inherently hurt their value when teams are going to go get them if they know that their player is going to be gone for a month of the season. Like obviously with Liverpool back in the day they had Mane and Salah and Matip. I don't think that did play a factor, thankfully, but you could see teams making a case of, okay, we could get these 2 exact players, A and B, but one will be gone for a month and one won't. Who are they going to select? They're probably going to select the person who has availability, because availability is the best ability. So it's really frustrating, especially when, soccer is pretty dead in the summers. So you can actually get to watch these games and discover some African and Asian talent that you probably haven't seen before. So, I mean, obviously I'm going to watch it and enjoy it, and we'll be covering it here on the show, but I really wish it would be, in the dead part of summer where I can really, watch most of the games and maybe come up with some conclusions of players that could be on the move here. So pretty disappointed about it, but hey, any content is good content for us and our football listeners. So I guess I'll take it as it comes, but we do have a little conspiracy theory here. You mentioned Forest missing quite a few players. Do you think that's why they moved on with Steve Cooper and moved in with Nuno to get a spark? Because they're going to need every single point they could get, especially with the FFP as well as the exclusions for AFCON.
Did not think you were going there at all. So that is I need to wrap my head around that one. It's an interesting thought. I don't think it had any impact into their decision, to be honest. I think it was just that the management wanted a change, and credit to them. They've had a manager bounce going into this. We'll see what happens. Of course, the good thing about Forest is that he has about 100 players on his roster to figure out the best 11 while they're gone. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Of course, please, let us know, chime in on X at Fulltime Roundup for any thoughts around AFCON or Asian Cup, if we missed anything, or if anyone knows specifically why these tournaments are in the summertime. We'd love to hear from you guys, educate us a little bit as well. Of course, Daniel, you mentioned, kind of the way that some of the teams have scaled and ways that they're picking players potentially because of this. I think one of the things that may have been a factor. And again, please let us know. We're just kind of projecting here a little bit. Probably should have done a little bit more research on this, but the sport has changed so much over the years, right? And I think maybe there was an element of at some point where let's do it in the summer because there is a little bit of a talent gap for some of these players. But now, again, we just listed off 15 players, but even get to Onana from United. There's dozens of players that we're not mentioning that are some of the best players in the world. And so I think there has been a shift in the way the sport has been evolving and the smallness, if you will, of the sport just becoming more talented across all facets of the world, South America, Asia, United States, or North America, Europe, etc. So it is interesting. Again, we don't know the real reason, so let us know if you do know. But with that being said, there is opportunity, Daniel, for some of these teams to reload, to fill some of those holes. Of course, the transfer window is officially open as of January 1st. There are a few teams that are making some moves, or at least it seems that way. We have heard, or it is confirmed, that City have agreed to a Chevry, and I'm going to butcher that name. So if you have it correctly, Daniel, I know you chimed in the other day on it, from Argentina. He is a new wonder kid, 17 years old, that they've agreed to deal with. So that is done. We also have been hearing Jadon Sancho is going to be on loan from Manchester United to Borussia Dortmund. Good riddance for that. Good luck to him in Borussia Dortmund. I think Manchester United could not wait to get him off their roster. He will still be on the books. They will pay, it sounds like, a $3 million loan fee to Manchester United, but salary will still be covered by United. So an interesting loan there. Of course, I think the ramifications for that is if Jadon Sancho gets into the lineup, plays well for the next 6 months, they can move him on a little bit easier or recoup some of that fee that they paid earlier. The other big one that we keep hearing about is Conor Gallagher to Spurs. No real concrete news here yet on this one, but this just continues to find its way through the channels and the rumor mill. It'll be interesting to see if Chelsea and Spurs get a deal done. Of course, rivals in London, and what that looks like. Is it a loan deal? Is it a permanent move? An interesting one to make. And again, the willingness of two rivals to make a deal will be interesting. But of course, tons more rumors and transfers that may happen. I don't think, we both agree. I think there aren't going to be any major blockbuster deals in January. There was rumor of Chelsea going after Ivan Toney or Osimhen for 130 million. I don't see that happening in this window, but you may think otherwise, Daniel. But anything else that stands out to you as far as big deals in January that get done, or just deals that make an impact?
You mentioned Spurs. They're looking to sign a center back. It seems like Dragusin is the guy they had their sights on. Also, Todibo. So that's one that will really help strengthen that back line that they've needed pretty bad. I mean, you can't just have Dyer and Emerson Royale and Ben Davies starting as your center backs. That just can't happen. But Mickey Van de Ven's back. He's looking like he's back in training, so maybe that curbs that need there. I've been trying to rack my brain all day for a big signing, a big splash. I mean, we mentioned Endrick and Victor Roque already. Roque made his debut today against Las Palmas, looked pretty good, looked hungry. I could see him actually replacing Lewandowski in the lineup sooner rather than later. I'm trying to think of, is there anyone I could see? There's some big names in MLS that could be on the move. So look for like a Thiago Almada, who's actually a fantastic player, land himself somewhere in a good team in Europe. I think he's probably the biggest name. Duncan McGuire, this U.S. kid who came out of nowhere for Creighton and just took the MLS by storm last year. So that's another one I'd keep my eye on too, but no big blockbuster signings. Just, I would feel like most of these teams are going to get lesser names just to kind of add to depth here, but no like starting caliber player. I'm excited to talk about Sancho at some point just to see if he can, get back to fitness as soon as possible, or is it going to take a while for him to ease back in? Like you mentioned, he hasn't been playing football for a pretty long time, but it just reeks of desperation. So it could be a boom or a bust. Who knows? But if he could get back to his Sancho at Dortmund days, that would be a pretty cool watch. And maybe Ten Hag's not even going to be, in the picture in a coming, in the summer. So maybe he'll have his shot at getting back into that squad.
It will be interesting to see. You mentioned a couple MLS teams as well. Zach Steffen going back to MLS from Manchester City, signing with Colorado Rapids, as well as Georgi Mihailovic, who is from AZ Akmar, rumored to be with Charlotte FC, but he also will be joining Zach Steffen in Colorado for the Rapids. So that is an interesting one. Daniel, you also mentioned, and I did hear this a while back, I wonder if it happens in January, potentially Robert Lewandowski moving to the MLS is a potential move for him. If you're Barcelona and someone offers you a good chunk of money, especially with Victor Roque coming in and playing well, and then some other pieces there, I don't know how you don't take that money, especially given their financial situation. So keep an eye out for that.
What's it worth, you think?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know what the limitations are from an MLS perspective. So if he goes to MLS, I think there has to be something there. Of course, DP players, they have unlimited cap, or is there are
the cap plus the transfer fee doesn't like play into effect anymore.
So I mean,
you could spend whatever.
I could see, depending on where he goes, if someone wants to make a big splash, one of the big clubs like LAFC or LA Galaxy or NYCFC, Inter Miami is probably fully loaded at this point. I don't know if they spend as enough. 40 million.
You think 40 million?
He went to Barcelona for 40. Oh. I mean, he went to Barcelona for 50, I think, if I remember correctly. I think if someone offers Barcelona between 30 and 40 million, I don't know how they turn that down. There's only a few clubs in MLS that can do that. There's only a few owners that could afford that. So it narrows the list. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're Barcelona, otherwise, why would you take that deal? I mean, unless things are that dire. But again, if you're looking at someone paying over 30, I don't see them saying no to that.
That's fair. I could see Lewandowski moving after the season, right? So
in the summertime,
in the summer. So that would be midway through MLS. I think that's a lot more likely because you can't just put it all on Victor Roque and Ferran Torres, who hasn't been amazing this year. So I think they would wait till after the season, but I could see it. I think the biggest transfer fee was from Miguel Almiron, and that was 26 million. Wait, no, that was to Newcastle. I was trying to look it up on the fly. Incoming transfers, Thiago Mata was 15.9 million, so almost 16, rounded up. Robert Lewandowski would shatter that record, obviously. I don't think any MLS club would be willing to go over 25 million at this point in time for any player. But, I could be wrong, and this could be when MLS clubs start spinning. I mean, hell, we just mentioned Colorado building an actual competent roster. Haven't seen that in decades.
Let's slow down. Let's slow down about competent roster. They've got some pieces. We'll see what happens there. But yeah,
that's fair. But yeah, every week we'll kind of go over the signings as they happen. It's early, so nothing crazy has happened, but I'm sure that deadline day pod will go crazy. So I'm looking forward to discussing that with you in the future. Now, predictions, our favorite part of the show here. We do have a limited schedule, but I still picked out 5 games for us to talk about. And I'll probably start with the game of the week here. Liverpool, Arsenal, FA Cup tie. How do you think this match is going to go?
Couldn't have been a worse draw for either team, especially at this round of the tournament, 4th round in the FA Cup. Arsenal could use a result. I said that after the West Ham game, and they laid an egg against Fulham as well. By the way, there can be draws here, as we did just see today with Crystal Palace and Everton. So there'll be a replay for that game at 0-0. I don't want to put a draw. I want to give a winner for this game. I will say 1-0 Arsenal. No, not against anything against you. I just think Arsenal are due to get a result. I think it's a tight match. 1-0 Arsenal.
It's at Arsenal at the no. What is their stadium called?
They're at the Emirates.
Arsenal are due. I think this will end in a draw, and I'll have to go to a second cup. I think replacing Salah, it'll take a game or two to kind of get used to that. So I could see Liverpool struggling slightly with just adapting here. I'm going to go 1-1 draw here. Pretty tight, contested match. Should be a fun match to watch, though. But I disagree with you slightly. We also have a pretty fun matchup here. Haven't seen this one in a while since Sunderland got relegated again, and then promoted. But it's a derby. I don't know what the derby's called, but do
Big
you know what
derby.
it's called?
I have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it's the
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Tynesdale derby.
Tyneside or
Yeah,
Tynesdale?
Tyneside derby. I said Tynesdale
Tyneside
earlier.
derby.
Tyneside derby. Yeah,
And boy, do they hate each other. So that
they
should
really
be a
do.
raucous. This one might be the FA Cup game of the week here. Newcastle are struggling, so I'm sure Sunderland will be licking their chops, ready to give them a go. How do you think? I think it's at Sunderland too. What's your prediction?
Boy, Eddie Howe is struggling mightily right now. How can you take Sunderland? But this is a derby. You just throw the
Joe Bellingham.
You just
Your
throw the
butt
records
buddy?
out the window. I'll take Sunderland. 2-0. 2-0.
2-0. Wow. I'm gonna go Newcastle, big bounce back game, but not on the scoreline, just as a result. I'm gonna say 2-1 Newcastle.
Really, really out there pick. I like that from you.
Wolves, Brentford. One of these weird games. Thomas Frank has been struggling. Gary O'Neill's men have been hot as of late. But we didn't even mention Wolves missing Wong. I didn't even realize that. And Mario Lemina. Shit. My fault, guys. But they are going to be missing two key players here. Are the goals going to dry up as Huang is gone? Don't know, but who is your prediction?
Brentford 1-0. Not confident about it. And again, like we said before, we just keep naming names that are just so important that are going to be gone as part of the AFCON and Asia Cup, and it just continue. You keep forgetting people. So yeah, give me Brentford 1-0.
Just a bump on that, Johan Vissa will be out, and Onyeka for Brentford. Two lesser names, so that's why we didn't include them. But that will hurt their attack and their midfield. I'm going to go 1-1 draw here. I think this will be replayed as the teams are filling out their gaping holes in their midfield and up top. Juve Salernitana Part 2. They just played today. Juve beat that ass 6-1. Will Salernitana turn over again, or will they give them a result? Salernitana, to be fair, went up 1-0, but then conceded 6 in a row. How do you see this result?
I think you just nailed it right there. Of course, that was Coppa Italia today. It'll be for the league on Part 2. Not 6-1 maybe, but I think 3-1. Juve get the result, and they keep pace with Inter in Serie A.
Has Allegri's team ever scored 6 before? That's got to be a record, I feel like. But I'm going to
It's almost like that game when Diego Simeone was so surprised that they scored 5, and he was like upset that they did it. So it's probably the same feeling for Allegri.
Couldn't agree more. I'm going to say 4-0 Juve. And then the last on the docket, Roma versus Atalanta. You know, this is kind of a legacy game, really big game as two teams are trying to fight for top 4 here. Who do you got, Jose or Gasparini?
Boy, give me Jose. I love me some Jose. You know this, and I think this is a big game for them. Again, in the table, it's not. We're not in the cup in this instance. There's, of course, you mentioned a light schedule here, Copa del Rey, but they're pretty early in the tournament, so a lot of the big teams are playing Division 3 or Division 4 clubs, so not many huge matchups in that tournament. We've mentioned FA Cup for England. So yeah, this is the only real league going, as some of the other leagues are still off. Copa de France still going as well. So there's not much, domestic play. Yeah, Roma needs it. Give me Roma 2-1.
I'm going to go Atalanta here, which I'll probably end up regretting this pick, but it's hard to choose against Roma at home. But two very opposite-minded coaches here go at it, so it should be an interesting affair. Don't know if this will be your one nap game. I think all the Copa del Rey and the French games and the FA Cup, really boring ones, could be all your nap games for you. So sorry I didn't have a
light schedule.
That's true.
By the way, those two teams, Atalanta and Roma, right behind each other in the table. 1 point separating those two, so a huge result here. Of course, both teams only 2 points behind Bologna for 5th, so a big matchup here. even though it's, one of those off the radar games, especially with how light the schedule is. So yeah, especially given all that context, give me Jose Mourinho. I think he's going to get it done.
Thank you for tuning in to another midweek pod of the full-time roundup, or as Matt, you said, was a midweek roundup. But as always, please like, subscribe, download, rate our podcast 5 stars specifically. That really helps us spread our brand. Follow us on Twitter at full-time roundup. Follow Matt at Life of Gesslin. Follow myself at Liverpool CLTFC. We will be back on Sunday, and we hope you enjoy the games.